For this part of the project, we're gonna go ahead, replace the seat, the tank, and while that's off, we're gonna fit our bar risers. A few things about this. This is a 640 tank, I believe, with a 640 seat, so it's gonna mount up a little bit differently, but the seat and tank are together and we have to replace them as a pair together. While we have the bars off, we're gonna have to go ahead and look at our cable lengths and see what we need to replace. I know for sure we're gonna need throttle cables. Once that's all apart, we'll figure out the rest. First, we're gonna take off the seat. There's one bolt on the bottom and then it has a slide mount right here. So let's get this mount on the bottom. It's kind of a tricky spot. And again, this is specific to the 640 model seat. 625 seats will have more of a motocross style seat connection. Now it should slide off from the back. And the tank's got one mount bolt right here. So we go ahead and make sure our petcock's off. We go ahead and remove this fuel line. And now we're ready to take the tank off. Now we should be able to work our tank off. Because it's big, it's kind of a pain in the ass. There we go. So we need to get the fuel and the petcock out of the old tank. So go ahead and set this up here. We'll go ahead and take the fuel line off the bike, put it on the tank, and we'll use the fuel line to drain our fuel into our fuel tank. So now we're gonna go ahead and remove our old petcock. So before we go ahead and install this, we're gonna take a look at our fuel filters. They're not too bad, just make sure there's not a bunch of gunk on there. You might wanna wipe them down real quick. I'm also gonna make sure that this rubber seal is in good shape because that's what's gonna seal the fuel in. And then you wanna make sure that each of these bolts have these little copper washers with them. If they don't, you'll get fuel leaking from there. So it looks like this one has its right there. We have this one here and it looks like we're ready to go back in. So it's gonna be a pretty tight fit to get this filter passed. Make sure it's in the right direction, right? The fuel fittings to be pointing towards the rear. Get it lined up. Make sure your copper washers are on. Go ahead and cinch down your bolts. Remember, it's plastic, you don't want to over tighten them. Do the typical snug in a 16th turn, should be good to go. So you can skip this process of swapping petcocks if you get two separate ones. I plan on ordering a spare petcock for the other tank for long distance rides like the backroad discovery route and stuff like that. So while the tank and the seat are off, we're gonna go ahead and test fit our handlebar risers. So we know things like the throttle cables here are gonna have to be changed. I bought some longer ones for that. There's a lot of things we don't know. Like we don't know if this compression release valve is gonna work. We don't know if some of the brake stuff's gonna work. So we're gonna put the risers on, we're gonna test fit it and see how everything looks. So these are the risers we're going to go ahead and install. Again, you can get these things off Amazon. Pretty cheap. I like these 3 or 4 inch lifts. Who's to say? So we go ahead and install the base of the riser. So now we're gonna go ahead and set the bars here and kind of see what cables fit and don't fit. So it's really tight, as you can tell. We're gonna have a lot of adjustments to make. I'm gonna go ahead and secure it loosely and then we'll go from there. So you're gonna wanna check full extension on each side. And after doing so, I'm kind of thinking I don't need to get any extended cables. I might have to adjust some zip ties to make sure things aren't too tight. I was concerned about this brake line and I was concerned about the throttle cables, but given the extension they have right now, I'm thinking we can get away with it. we'll know for sure when I go ahead and mount the tank on. All right, so we're gonna go ahead and dry fit this tank. You got these two mounting points right here. They're gonna fit on some rubber grommets you'll see right here and right here. Now is a really good time to take a look at them and make sure they're not damaged, because that can happen. And the third place it's gonna mount is right here on this stud. Okay, now that we kind of have it seated in place, we're gonna do the same thing. Full extension right. I'm okay with that. Full extension left. And we're pulling on this throttle cable. And ultimately what's gonna happen is it's gonna give you throttle when you don't need to. So I thought that ahead of time. I ordered another set. We're gonna go ahead and pull this tank off and replace those throttle cables. So we're gonna go ahead and take these old cables off. Remove this C clamp, or this clamshell clamp. If you take a look here, you'll see that they'll index the end of this cable here. So you're gonna have to go ahead and roll the cable out, slide out the pin. You get that side out, go ahead and do that to the other side as well. I'll do it from this angle so you can see a little bit better. Go ahead and grab the cable itself, roll it out, slide out the pin, and this side is disconnected. So now we need to take start over. So now we need to take the cables off from the carburetor side. This is a bit trickier. This also houses the adjustments of your cables. So we're gonna go ahead and back this top jam nut off. And of course it's in a really fun spot. Really easy to get to. They did a great job here. And then we're gonna wanna do it on the secondary one as well. This one's even more fun. Once you get them loose, we're gonna go ahead and flop the throttle, the actual throttle of the carburetor down, slide out the pin. And you should have some slack because they're not attached up here, but you might have to wiggle it just a little bit to get these pins out. Once that's done, we're probably gonna have to back these nuts off a little bit more. Until it reaches a point. And you can see what's happening is this jam nut up on the bottom side is lowering. What we're gonna have to do is we're gonna have to get it past this mount bracket. So let's keep going. And there we go. There's one. Wow, what a pain in the ass. Now this back one won't slide out as easily. We're gonna have to take this bottom nut all the way off and pull the cable from the bottom. So we got this bottom nut removed all the way. The throttle pulled out, and our old cables are gone. So go ahead and make sure these are supposed to be 4 inches longer than stock. I'm gonna go ahead and ensure they match up and they look the same. Top looks the same. That looks good. And lengthwise, we look about 4 inches longer. That's good. Now for install, we're gonna do the same thing in reverse order. We're gonna go ahead and lay it in the way we want, right? And if I remember correctly, these fed underneath the frame right here, but on this side of this wire. Of course, they're working with me really well. So for the back, we're gonna have to go ahead and take this jam nut off, slide it down, get the cable across its end of the bracket, and slide it in. And we're going to run this up by hand as far as we can, kind of keeping it in place. gonna go ahead and leave everything kind of loose until we get everything set up. We're gonna go ahead and do the second cable. And for this one, we just need to leave this jam nut in here, and we're gonna move the top one. So slide this jam nut in the bottom towards the lower end. No. As you can see, it's kind of a wrestling match, and if you look really closely, it's going to index in this bracket right here. But this little tang grabs onto this bottom nut, right? And that's really what cinches the cable into place. So once we've got that in place, go ahead and fit these pins in. And we'll go to the top. So while this is off, we're gonna go ahead and do the grips. These are heated grips, and as you can see, this wire broke a long time ago, and then just from me messing it caused the other one to break. So I'm gonna go ahead and check it on this side, but they're easy to take off now. We're gonna go ahead and pull the hand guards off and get the grips off the heated grip housing, throttle housing. We're gonna pull off the end cap and the inner clamp mount. So there's a few different ways to do this. You can either take your compressed air hose, if you're gonna reuse the grips, jam them in here, run compressed air, and try to work its way out. This thing's garbage, I'm never gonna use it again. I'm just gonna go ahead and cut this thing off. So we're going to go ahead and apply our glue. Slide her in place. So we are going to have to cut these caps off because we do have bark busters. So when you have these bark busters, they seat up against the end of the bar. So we're definitely going to have to cut a hole out. What I found works best if you cut all the way on the outside. If you don't, sometimes this grip will jam up against the bark buster and it'll kind of stick throttle for you, and we don't want to do that.
Very sensual the way you did that though.
Yeah. I'm a sensual guy.
Sensual guy.
All right, so we're gonna go ahead and line up our cable pins. Now you wanna make sure these cables are gonna index like this, right? So the one that's a little bit longer is gonna go in the back side, and the one that's a little bit shorter is gonna go on the front side. Slide your pin in, roll it back, slide the pin in, roll it forward. All right, now we're gonna go ahead and index our clamps. Wish I had 4 hands. I'm gonna go ahead and install these just finger tight so that we still have some play while we go ahead and adjust the linkage. So typically I'd spend a bunch of time adjusting these throttle cables to just the right length. However, at a fully backed out state, they're exactly where they need to be. So I'll just go ahead and tighten these jam nuts, and then we should be good to go. So we're gonna go ahead and set the bars where we want them to be. This side has a pin that forces this inner pin to expand. Sometimes it's hard to get it to start again. So if you grab a set of needle nose or any sort of pliers, really, kind of get it to start a little bit. There we go. Then you can pop her in and tighten it up. So now we're going to go ahead and fit our tank. Make sure you get the throttle cables and these sheaths in the right location. Careful not to pinch any wires. Go ahead and make sure our cables are where we want them to be. Then we can go ahead and seat our tank. So one more thing we'll have to swap from the tank is there's a screw. It's going to seat the top of this seat. I'm just going to go ahead and make sure we're fitting fine first. Looks how we're supposed to. We'll go ahead and swap that from the old tank. Now, the one difference between this seat is there's going to be a quick connect motocross style seat. I don't have one. It's going to mount right there. You're going to have to order one. We'll go ahead and install our fuel line. Give it some fuel. Make sure we don't have any leaks after we put fuel in it. So now we need to go ahead and adjust the bars. And what I typically like to do is sit on it as if I was riding it and kind of get the position of the bars set up right. You're gonna have to figure out left and right, make sure they're nice and centered. And KTM does a good job of giving you your angles right here. It'll give you a couple different settings. I just like to make sure the grips are gonna be good here. And then when standing, I tend to roll them down just a little bit further. And I think that's where I need to be right here. So KTM was nice about their bars. They gave us little marks. And these clamps have to be right on that third mark side by side. So it makes it really easy to space them out. Well, all right, so we did the risers. We put the stock tank back on. Got the SXC seat instead of the 640 seat. We did our front fairing. And we did our grips. And now, just gotta take the thing for a test drive.